Dan Rosales. Welcome to Talking Theatre Friends. I'm so happy to be talking to you. It's been quite some time since we last spoke, but
Yes.
I'm so happy that you're back in Dogman. So, for people who have not been to Dogman yet, what is Dogman the musical and who do you play in it?
Right. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. Dogman the Musical is a spin-off from the world famous Captain Underpants books. So the two main protagonists are George and Harold and Captain Underpants. I played Harold Hutchins, who creates this comic about half dog, half man in Captain Underpants. And that's now its whole own subset of series and books, and now an off-Broadway musical. And I play one of the best friends, Harold Hutchins, in it. It's a really fun, farcy, splashy, it's a good time. It's a good time.
I mean, as you know, I adore this musical. Like, I freaking love this musical so much. So, the times when I saw it, I always wondered, is it as fun for you being on stage as it is for us who are, as audience members?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the show is such a wild ride. It's, with intermission, probably about 75 to 80 minutes, maybe 90 minutes. But once you start, don't stop. And hearing the reaction from this, predominantly younger audience, all of the giggles and the laughter, and even just the recognition of like, oh my gosh, that's Harold, or hey, Flippy, or, calling out character names, it just boosts the mood immediately. So yes, we're, at work doing this musical, but it's a pretty spectacularly fun job to do.
You're right. Like, I probably was always like one of the oldest audience members every time I saw it. But there's this really beautiful quality about the musical, and is that it really made me feel like a kid again. Like, it has this like DIY almost quality to it. Like, I mean, it starts off in a tree house, if
Mhm.
I remember it correctly. So
That's correct. Yeah.
can you talk a little bit about when you were growing up, who was your dog man, or what were the things that you played with your friends and cousins? Who did you imagine you were?
It's so funny because animated like cartoons and movies were such a huge part of, my childhood, being, a child of the 90s and absorbing all that media. Like, I remember being so in love with like Rugrats and like the Powerpuff Girls and like this like really amazing like American cartoon, stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. And I remember being in elementary school and playing like the Powerpuff, like I would play the villain, and like I had these friends who would play like the trio of the Powerpuff Girls, and then me and my other friends would like switch off being like the bad guy, or it was so fun. So that was kind of my version of Dogman, is like absorbing this media and being like, wow, this is so cool. Like, it's these young kids doing all these amazing things, being superheroes, or, saving the world. So it was so accessible that I was like, yeah, I can save the world, even though I'm playing a bad guy, I'm still like part of this story, that was a blast.
I mean, technically, villains always have more fun. So I'm with you.
Yes,
I'm
that's
playing a
true.
villain.
That's true. And they get a redemption story a lot. So, you live, you learn, you grow better from it. So
So when you were cast in Dogman, did you go and read the books and like try to like absorb all the Dogman material that was available out there?
I did. So when I first heard about it, it was a workshop that TheaterWorks USA was doing. It was, just a private workshop for the creators and the writers, Brad Alexander and Kevin Del Aguila. And I hadn't really heard about it. But as soon as I got it, I have an older brother who has two sons, my nephews, and they were obsessed with Dogman. They were like, I'm sorry, there's a Dogman musical? And the thought had never occurred to them. Like, it was such a novel idea. So I did borrow their books, to see like what this all was about. And it's Dave Pilkey, who created the whole series, Captain Underpants and Dogman, and all these versions of the books. He's so incredibly smart and so talented, but he writes in a way that is not like at a younger audience. He writes to them and about them. And it's so accessible, like reading these stories. It's a graphic novel, of course, but I find myself laughing as much as an 8-year-old would, or a 10-year-old, because some of the jokes are geared towards the parents who buy these books. It's very Pixar in that way. So yes, I did go out and try to absorb as much Dogman material as I could to kind of get the tone of what was happening. And it was, it was a blast because it's so funny and it's so well written. And a lot of them are spoofs off of like famous novels. Like this version of Dogman that we're doing is based off of A Tale of Two Cities. And the Dogman version of it is called A Tale of Two Kitties. So, there's little crumbs for the adults in the audience too.
So going back to when you were little and you were playing out all this cartoon fantasies, like, can you kind of trace back to how you ended up becoming an artist and a performer on stage? Like, was there like Tiny Dan just like either directing or like really getting into character while you were playing in school?
Yeah, I wonder. I think it all just started with an after school program. My parents worked full time and I didn't have the luxury to be picked up by them as soon as school ended at 3 p.m. or whatever it was. So I had to be in an after school program, and they had a drama program, a drama club in elementary school. And I remember just being like, whoa, this is like playing pretend, but better and more fun than it could ever be, because it's like with everyone else, and there was like a structure to it. I remember the first thing that we ever did, I think, was like a Men in Black performance to the multiplication table songs, and we all dressed with like sunglasses and we were like being cool, like singing about numbers. So I think that's where it started. And it was maybe like a 10-minute performance. But I remember like my mom came, my aunt came, and they filmed it. And we were all these like, elementary school kids and dressed in all black with sunglasses, singing like our times tables. But it stuck somehow. Like, I think that's what kind of put the little seed of like artistry and imagination of like, oh, I can take something that's about school, like math or something, and make it fun in a way that I relate to, or maybe that someone else relates to.
So I'm sure you never forgot how to multiply then if you had a song to go with it, right?
It's so embarrassing. I still remember these songs because they're so sing-songy. And as a fully grown adult, I will still sometimes have to use these songs to remember like 8 times 9 or whatever number it is. And I'm like, and I'll sing the little song and I'll get there, and it makes me happy inside.
So what was it like then? Because you followed the path where you went to school and you went to drama school and you followed, the academic path. So what was it like for you when you told your parents, hey, I want to be an actor when I grow up?
As you can imagine, it's never, sometimes it's easy, I'm sure, but it's never an easy conversation to have with parents who want to secure success for their child in every aspect, which is, I think, every parent's dream. So the life of an artist isn't always successful financially or career-wise. There's different levels of success. So when I had that conversation with them about, hey, I think this is what I want to do, it was met with just a bit of resistance, but in a careful way of like, are you sure? You're very talented, but there's other things you could do this on the side, or you could have it as a hobby. And in my mind, I was like, no, I think I have to do this. Like, I enjoyed storytelling. I love, finding humanity in these characters or whoever I play and bringing that to people. Because we absorb it all the time. The whole world, this is so cliche, but the whole world's a stage. Everyone's an actor. Everyone is acting in some facet of their life. So it was a great conversation. A good conversation turned into a great decision when I went to a conservatory and studied it. And I've been very fortunate to have been working as much as I have after graduating. So I'm glad I followed my gut.
And you graduated with honors. So what was like the school experience like? What were some things that you were, I don't know, you were not expecting maybe to learn in school? And what were some things that you learned that you had no idea you would be learning in school?
Yeah, so I went to a conservatory, to Boston Conservatory. And growing up, I had never gone to like a music school, or all I had was choir in high school and middle school and like drama club. But going to a conservatory like that, it's a little bit like a boot camp. It's very routine oriented. Like we had our dance classes at the same time, 4 days a week. You had 2 voice lessons per week. You had an acting class, and then you had a voice and speech class. And it was very when I first got there, it was a little overwhelming because I didn't know what to expect. It was like, whoa, like this has unlocked a whole other portion of my brain of like how to properly train to be a full, well-rounded artist. Um, you know, some of the, I think the thing that I discovered the most that I didn't expect to learn was how fluid all of the classes are with each other. We had to take like one general ed class. It was a conservatory, they cut us a break. So we had to take like just a few gen eds every now and then. But all of the classes so seamlessly. What I learned in my ballet class, I could apply some sort of this ease to my acting class, or technique, and vice versa. Like it's very, I don't know, nebulous. Like it all works together. So that was fascinating to hear that I could apply or learn different aspects into different techniques.
And I mean, you were already good at math with your math song and everything, so you didn't need any more of that, right?
Listen, I'm great at singing my times tables. I don't know if I'm good at math, but
So looking back at your experience in school, what are some things that you would like to teach? Like, what do you think you would be really good at teaching kids and young people?
um I think what I enjoy most, I love singing and I've always loved singing. I think what I would love to teach young people is kind of like, what's the story of the song? Like, what is the journey of a song? And how do you find the peaks and valleys, not only in your voice, but in the storytelling of what you're trying to say? Like what every song can be pretty or intense or rock or whatever, but like what are you saying and why do these words matter in this moment? That's something that I always try to bring, of course, in my performances, but just I think it's important to tell young people now that it's not all about how high you can belt or how fierce you are. Some of the most beautiful songs that I know are, stay in the staff, but the storytelling of it is really what crafts a beautiful performance. So I think that's something I would enjoy teaching.
Who are you connecting to or with when you do Dogman? Then is it little Dan? Is it your nephews?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a younger version of myself, and knowing that there are kids like my nephews out there who are seeing many of them, their very first theater experience ever. I mean, there's a lot of young families there. There's older kids too, and a lot of them come with the books. They're just so excited. So it's kind of speaking to the broader audience of like, you can enjoy a book as much as you can enjoy theater, and the two worlds can meet together to create this fun, beautiful family story. So it's kind of speaking to like that younger generation and my nephews and myself. Yeah.
It's been almost 4 years since you first started doing Dogman off Broadway. So as we all know, we've been through a lot
Mhm.
over the past few years. So what was it like for you to return to a character that you love so much, a musical that you love so much? Was it just like putting on your favorite cardigan, to quote Taylor?
Oh, yes. In a way, it was. I mean, as you've said, the past 4 years have been wild for all of us. And I'm just, a little bit older now than I was playing a 10-year-old 4 years ago. But in many ways, the heart is there in the story, the humor is there in the story, and the connections of these characters, even though it is like fanciful exciting tale about a half dog, half man, you know, the heart is still there. So that's the most beautiful thing, is like coming back to it. And even though it's a little bit harder to run around on stage as much as we are, finding that and being able to share that with the audience is as easy as ever.
Something that I really love about everything that I've seen by theater works is how they are able to combine the educational aspect of, the arts with art itself. So like none of their works ever feel like you're being like, like it's not like a didactic lesson. You don't feel like you're being given a lesson. And yet I took my nephew to Dogman the first time. I did not have a child the other times I went. But I took my nephew and he seemed to be so much wiser after leaving the show. So just thinking about theater in general, like what do you think are some of the most valuable lessons that theater has taught you as a human being, not only as an artist?
That's a great question. I think it's a lot of it boils down to empathy and compassion. Not only as like a human actor having compassion for the world and these stories and these characters, but as a character, how you can be a more empathetic person to someone who's in a scene with you, or what your story is. As I was leaving the theater yesterday, the actor who plays Petey, Jamie Laverdiere, he overheard a grandfather and his grandson saying, I thought it was so beautiful how Petey kind of comes around in the end to be more accepting of those around him and those with different ideas. He learns to be more compassionate. And he was like, this was way better than I could have ever expected, So I think it's just these little tales that, TheaterWorks does an amazing job at not playing at children, but like teaching them very important things that everyone could use a refresher on, parents included, in a very accessible way.
I forgot Petey is a total icon. I love Petey so much. So when you get to perform in front of an audience that's, like predominantly children, what are the differences when you perform, like an adult play, so to speak? Like, do children behave in a more, I don't even know, like, is it more exciting, I guess, to play for children than grown-ups? Are we more cynical?
100%. We're all a little cynical and jaded, and we have the right to be after these past couple of years. It's been tough. The thing that is so rewarding about playing to a younger audience right now is that they don't carry that with them yet. They're so happy to be there. I mean, the sheer wall of sound that we get, I think every show this weekend was sold out. We played to like 1,500 people already. We only had 2 days of previews. But they're just so excited to be there in that moment. And I think that's what I loved most about being a child, that I try to remember, is like, as a child, you're so present in everything that you're doing, whether you're playing pretend, sometimes when you're learning, but even if you're daydreaming while you're supposed to be learning, like you are so in that. And that's what's been so cool to see in these audiences, is that they're so present. Like they're really listening to every word we're saying, every song we're singing, even the silly little jokes that we say in the show that are geared towards them. They think it's the funniest thing they've ever heard, So that's been really cool to see.
I mean, in your defense, they're pretty phenomenal jokes, so I don't blame them for laughing.
Yes, I mean, Kevin is an amazing book writer. His jokes are very, very funny. Yes.
So I wanna like go like a little dark for a second, maybe not dark, but a little bit more serious for a second. And thinking about everything that we have been through over the past few years, what kept you going? Because, for a while it seemed like, we didn't know if we were going to be able to be together at the theater again. And everything was so scary, I guess, for a lack of a more refined term. So what kept your creative juices flowing when theater, when live theater and community theater was shut down?
Yeah, I mean, it did get dark for a lot of artists, because there was nothing out there. There was nothing for a while. I have an incredible support system. So that was, super, super helpful. But just, keeping the faith, as cheesy as it sounds, it's like we always come out of, there's always an end to things, whether they're good or bad, and just waiting for that day when we could all get together again. I just randomly was lucky enough to be part of that first equity approved musical in the United States, which was the Godspell at Berkshire Theater Group, which was the first musical performed during COVID. And that was a really big eye-opening experience. And that was, I think, in June or July of the pandemic. So it was pretty early on in 2020. And just even the thought that I was like, am I really going to do this? That kept me going. And like, all right, well, we're going to be safe. We're going to wear masks and we're going to do all this stuff. I was very lucky to have something to look forward to and to think about and be like, and how we could present it to, even if it was 80 people outside under a tent singing Godspell under, in a parking lot, we created theater in the way that we could. And I think that's what kept me going, is that we all found ways, whether it was, doing Zoom plays or Zoom readings or, making silly little videos on Instagram. We found ways to keep creating, even if we couldn't do it in a space where people could come pay and watch us, or anyone was watching us. We found a way to keep the fire alive.
And in many ways, I think I thought a lot about Dogman when the pandemic first started, because in many ways, I feel that theater artists went back almost to that, childlike need to create kind of, quality. So what has changed the most for you about the way in which you approach your work nowadays?
Nowadays, I certainly don't take any of it for granted. All of the long rehearsal days, all of the exhaustion, the tiredness that one can feel, putting up a new show or remounting a show, it's all gravy, because we have the privilege of being able to perform and, open a lot of young people's eyes. I think that's something that I definitely bring more than I did before, is an awareness that nothing is always a given. It's a privilege to do this. Nothing is always guaranteed. There could be, knock on wood, another pandemic 2 months from now. Who knows? So just appreciating every moment as it comes. And I think also that's what this musical does, is that it's this very much found theater, like trunk theater, right? Like you said, we're in our treehouse. We get like cardboard, we get cutouts, and these kids create this amazing, imaginative musical just by thinking about it, and just appreciating that they can do that in that moment and be so in awe of it.
Has the way in which you treat yourself as a human being in terms of taking care of yourself changed as well?
Certainly. I mean, and I think rightfully so, there's more of an awareness, a social awareness, a social responsibility, to eliminating stereotypes and eliminating racial injustices, but also very importantly is like mental health and treating ourselves with respect and being able to say no, or being able to stop and when something makes you uncomfortable. It's just, we now have a more respectful eye on our lives, I think. And I think treating it with kindness and, a discerning eye is helping all of us. So I'm more aware now of how things make me feel, and not forcing myself, like the show must go on, let's keep doing this thing. It's like, it's still, we're still employees doing a job. And if something doesn't make me feel right, then, I can say something about it.
Do you have any favorite rituals or self-care, practices that you wouldn't mind sharing with people who are looking for practices of their own?
This show is surprisingly physical. So something that I knew that I needed, I know that I need to do something physical at the start of the day if I'm performing this show. So I've done that through yoga or just, warming up my body at the gym, but finding a moment where I can have 15, 20 minutes, just stretching my body, just being with myself and my breath, has really helped ground me in a way that I don't know if I appreciated as much, before these past couple of years. That, and of course, warming up this voice to, shout like a 10-year-old, but, yeah, it's just a very physical show. So, being able to appreciate that my body can do all these things, but giving it the grace that it needs to warm up to be able to do it.
What do you think little Dan would say or think about grown-up Dan if he sat through Dogman the musical?
I think he would really enjoy it. I mean, I know I said this earlier, but it very much is like a Toy Story or something like that, where it's like, it's a family oriented show, property, and there's something in it for everyone. I think little Dan would find joy and the creativity that these kids have, and their imagination and how they interpret an evil villain fish. So they get like a purple apron and spangly, salad tongs to be the claws. Just the sheer creativity in their creativity, I think little Dan would be really taken aback by and impressed by, like, whoa, I never thought of that before. Of course salad tongs are an evil fish's claws, like, why not?
Would you like to invite everyone who's watching and listening to go see Dogman, or how can we find more about the musical? There's a cast recording, right? Am I?
Yes, you can buy
Yes.
the cast recording on iTunes and Apple Music, I believe. Dogman the Musical is playing at New World Stages, Stage 3, in New York City from March 4th until April 30th. And you can go to dogmanthemusical.com for tickets, or TheaterWorks USA. Come check us out. It's really fun.
And are there any other places on streaming or any movies or TV shows where we can get more Dan Rosales if we wanted to?
Sure, you can go to danrosales.net and check out all my socials. You can hear this new audio comedy series I did with Richard Kind and Julie Halston on the Broadway Podcast Network, which is a good time. It's a lot of Broadway celebs in there, so come and listen.
Thank you so much, Dan. Ha sido un verdadero placer. I'll talk to you soon.
Igualmente. Gracias.